Many times when I'm talking with parents and we're talking about the age group of 8 to 14, the topic of nutrition and recovery come up, and it's often just kind of like on a peripheral basis. A lot of parents don't really understand the significance of this.
So they've got to get up and eat a good breakfast. They need, at a minimum of 2 to 3 eggs, a young man, depending on how much. In fact, I saw Paul Skeens, the great LSU pitcher, first round draft pick, first player picked in the draft. I saw him at the grocery store yesterday, and he had uh, 3 cartons of 18 eggs that he was buying. And he said, Coach, first thing I do every morning is get up and eat eggs. And that reminds me of another point I want to make here in a minute. But you've got to get up and eat breakfast, eat eggs, eat some fruit, drink a lot of water. That is very important. And then make sure that you're going to have a good lunch available. And then they've got to eat dinner. Dinner has to be the most nutritious meal of the day. Most kids, in the age group that we're talking about, has some form of practice or training session in the afternoon after school. So if I eat lunch at noon and then I don't eat lunch until after 6 p.m., that's 6 hours that you've missed out on food. And a young man should have something to eat at least every 4 to 5 hours. It's mandatory if they expect to grow and become strong and healthy.
This is actually a big foundation piece for young athletes. In other words, I know I was a dad, 2 sons, both had great appetites, but they were very picky eaters. And so I used to have to try and figure out ways to supplement from a nutrition basis, also hydration, and most critical of all, sleep. We do not understand the power of sleep. It is a restoration time. It is a replenishment time for student athletes, and it helps promote growth. When I am talking with parents, I try to encourage them. You don't need carrot sticks. You don't need a lot of the things that we're going down. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are great. Oranges, things that the kids like to eat, but the caloric intake is really important. And I think if parents took the time to understand that during the school year, a lot of children get up, put a bagel, they eat a bagel or they eat a bowl of cereal, try to include some protein in there. Get them to understand that this is going to be, if they really truly aspire to be a student athlete in their future, the sooner that they understand the importance of each meal that they eat is providing the fuel that their body needs in order to promote growth. That's a big foundation piece. The next piece is we often hear about hydration. We hear hydration all the time. The hydration piece is really more than just a Gatorade. In fact, hydration is trying to make sure they're getting water, electrolytes, things that will enhance their muscle tissue, their tendons, their ligaments that are growing during these early stages of athletics. And making sure they're properly hydrated is going to promote the strengthening and the lengthening of all of the ligaments and tissues and tendons and the stress that they're putting on those parts of their bodies, whether they're knee joints, their elbows, their shoulders, things of that nature. Most critical of all of these is sleep. A lot of times in today's world we have technology, whether it's a phone, whether it's an iPad, a television, we have a lot of that screen time. We're not putting enough emphasis on the winding down and making sure that the younger student athletes between these ages of 8 to 15 are getting that 8 to 10 hours.
A lot of people think that you get stronger and faster and in better condition while you train, but you don't. You get stronger and faster and bigger and more powerful when you recover from that work. There is a direct correlation in the length and quality of your sleep and your rate of injuries. If you're someone that doesn't sleep or burns the candle from both ends or stays up and plays video games, you're going to be injured more often than people who get 7 to 8 hours of sleep.
When people start to think about more sleep, they think, oh, he's lazy, I need to get him up. 8 to 10 hours is what your student athlete requires in order for their bodies to replenish, restore, recover, and grow. Make sure that your student athlete begins to understand that at a young age, that if they're going to bed at say 10 o'clock at night and they have to get up at 6, well, that's 8 hours. And so we want to make sure that they understand that, okay, let's try to wind down at 9:30 and let's try to make sure that we're getting that 8 to 9 hours of sleep, if at all possible. This, when we start talking about tournament baseball or travel baseball, and they have games at 8 a.m., sometimes maybe even a little earlier, got to get to bed early, and you got to make sure that they understand, okay, you have an 8 a.m. game. You might have a doubleheader that day. So making sure the body gets the proper rest is going to allow for the recovery and allow the student athlete to be able to perform at their best. So remember, dinner table, breakfast table, lunch table, snacks, water, hydration, electrolytes, sleep. That is a very, very big deal that you as a parent should chart with your student athlete. Talk about it. Get them to understand the power of sleep.